At Christmas dinner, my dad raised his glass and announced, "We've decided your bonus will go toward your brother's mortgage. He's starting a family." Mom agreed. It's the proper thing to do. My brother grinned as everyone clapped. I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and read a notification. One line that made my brother drop his fork in midair. Can you imagine sitting at Christmas dinner, the air thick with turkey and unspoken expectations, when your own father raises a glass and drops a bombshell that shatters your entire world? He announced, right there in front of everyone, that my hard-earned bonus, the biggest I'd ever seen, was no longer mine. It was now my brother's mortgage payment. My family applauded, my mother beamed, and my brother smirked. But they had no idea what was coming next because in that precise moment, I finally decided enough was enough. My name's Jason, I'm 34, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the dependable one. Not the celebrated one, not the golden child everyone gushed over at Thanksgiving, just dependable. I was the son who showed up when the water heater broke, the one who wired money when Dad's truck needed repairs. The silent safety net. Nobody ever thanked me because they just assumed I'd always be there. My younger brother, Ryan, was different. He's 28, charming, effortlessly adored. He had this way of walking into a room and making people smile, even when he hadn't done a single thing to earn it. Mom used to say he reminded her of Dad in his youth. Honestly, that should have been my first clue. Growing up, I watched Ryan get the new laptop while I kept my ancient hand-me-down. I watched him get his college tuition paid in full while I worked nights, busting my ass to cover mine. When he graduated and couldn't find a job, it was just Ryan being Ryan. But when I graduated and landed a consulting role, nobody asked how I was doing. They asked if I could help Ryan with his car payment. And I never said no. Family was family, right? That's what I told myself every time I opened my wallet. That's what I truly believed. Every time I swallowed the bitter taste of being overlooked. By the time I turned 30, I'd carved out a decent career. I worked brutal hours, traveled constantly, sacrificed weekends to close deals. My bonus that year was the biggest I'd ever seen. It felt like validation, like proof that all those quiet years of grinding had meant something. But did I spend it on myself? Of course not. I paid off Mom and Dad's credit card debt. I covered Ryan's security deposit when he moved into yet another new apartment he couldn't afford. I kept telling myself it was temporary. That eventually, they'd see me. Really see me. They didn't. Ryan got engaged last spring. The family was ecstatic. There were tears, toasts, endless talk about grandbabies. Nobody asked if I was seeing anyone. Nobody wondered if I was okay working 60-hour weeks, just staying afloat in a city that crushed people like me. By November, I knew this year's bonus would be even bigger. A promotion had come through. My manager called it a reward for loyalty. I felt something close to pride, a little flicker of hope. Maybe I thought I could finally take a real vacation. Maybe I could breathe. Then came the Christmas dinner invitation. Mom's voice on the phone was warm, almost too warm. She said the whole family would be there. She said it would be special. She couldn't wait to see me. I should have known better. But a part of me, that stubborn little part, still wanted to believe that this time it would be different. That this time, I'd be more than just the wallet they opened when Ryan needed something. I was wrong. The dining room smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon. It should have felt cozy. It didn't. I arrived on time, carrying a bottle of wine I'd spent too much on. Ryan was already there, leaning back in his chair with that easy confidence that made everyone else lean in. His fiancée, Jenna, sat beside him, laughing at something he'd said. Mom was buzzing around the kitchen, her voice bright and chirping. I set the wine on the counter. Mom glanced at it, smiled briefly, and went back to stirring gravy. No hug, no real greeting. Just that smile people give when they're relieved you showed up, so they don't have to feel guilty later. Dinner started normally enough. We passed dishes, made small talk, carefully avoided anything real. Then, halfway through the meal, Dad cleared his throat. He picked up his glass and tapped it with a fork. The room went quiet. That's when I felt it. The shift. Dad stood, glass raised, wearing the kind of expression people use when they're about to say something they think is noble. I want to take a moment to talk about family, he began, his voice warm and steady. We're blessed to have everyone here tonight. And with Ryan and Jenna starting their journey together, we've been thinking about how we can all support them. Ryan's smirk appeared, small but unmistakable. Dad continued, Jason, you've always been the responsible one, the one we can count on, and we know you've had a great year. That bonus of yours, well, we're all proud of you. My stomach tightened. A cold dread washed over me. I knew what was coming. Ryan's been struggling with his mortgage payments, Dad said, glancing at my brother like he was talking about a sick puppy. And with Jenna pregnant, well, they need stability. We've talked it over as a family, and we think the right thing to do is for your bonus to go toward covering a few months of their payments, just to get them on their feet. The room erupted in murmurs of approval. Aunt Linda nodded sagely. Uncle Rob muttered something about sacrifice. Mom looked at me with shining eyes, like I was about to do something heroic. Ryan didn't say a word. He just sat there, fork in hand, that smirk growing wider. I stared at Dad, then at Mom, then at the table full of people who thought this was already decided. Nobody asked me. Nobody even paused to see if I'd agree. They just announced it like it was a done deal, wrapped it in the language of love and duty, and waited for me to nod like a good son. Something inside me cracked. Not anger, not yet. Just a cold, creeping clarity. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. A bank account with a heartbeat. Dad raised his glass higher. To family, the room echoed it. Glasses clinked. Ryan's smirk turned into a full grin. And I just sat there, silent, while they toasted to my money like it was theirs. I didn't say anything. Not during dinner. Not when dessert came. Not when Mom squeezed my shoulder and whispered that I was doing the right thing. I just nodded, smiled when expected. Let them think I was on board. Inside, I was somewhere else entirely. I kept replaying Dad's words. We've decided. Not we'd like to ask. Not what do you think. Just decided, like I was a child who needed to be told what to do with my own earnings. And Ryan, God, Ryan just sat there, soaking it all in like he'd earned it. Like his inability to hold a job, his refusal to budget, his constant reliance on everyone else was somehow my responsibility to fix. I thought about all the years I'd said yes. All the times I'd wired money without hesitation. All the sacrifices I'd made while they celebrated him. I thought about the apartment I rented because I couldn't afford to buy. The vacations I'd never taken. The life I kept putting on hold because family came first. And then I thought about the notification sitting in my phone. The one I'd set up weeks ago. Just as a precaution, just in case. Because some part of me, buried deep, had known this moment was coming. I excused myself from the table quietly. Nobody noticed. They were too busy laughing, too caught up in their fantasy of Ryan's perfect little life, funded by my perfect little bonus. I stepped into the hallway, pulled out my phone, and stared at the screen. One tap. That's all it would take. I hesitated, not because I felt guilty, but because I knew once I did this, there was no going back. The mask I'd worn for 34 years would shatter. They'd see me differently. Or maybe, for the first time, they'd actually see me at all. I took a deep breath. Then I tapped the screen. The confirmation loaded instantly. My bonus, every single cent of it, transferred into an irrevocable trust account I'd set up with my financial advisor. Locked. Untouchable. Safe from anyone who thought they had a claim to it. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and walked back to the table. Ryan was mid-laugh, fork hovering near his mouth. Dad was pouring more wine. Mom was beaming. I sat down, calm as ever, and reached for my water glass. And then I smiled. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced pleasantries. I played my part. I nodded when spoken to. I even laughed at Uncle Rob's terrible joke about holiday traffic. But inside, I was counting down. Counting down to the moment they'd realized the money was gone. Counting down to the instant their smug certainty crumbled. It came sooner than I expected. Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned slightly, then set it face down. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. This time, He picked it up, his brow furrowing. I watched him from the corner of my eye, watched the confusion flicker across his face. He stood abruptly, muttering something about needing to make a call. Jenna looked concerned. Mom asked if everything was okay. Ryan waved her off, stepping into the kitchen with his phone pressed to his ear. I took another sip of water. Waited. When he came back, his face had changed. The smirk was gone. In its place was something tighter, sharper. He sat down slowly, eyes fixed on me. "Jason," he said, his voice careful. "Can I talk to you for a second?" I set my glass down. "Sure." We stepped into the hallway, away from the table. Ryan crossed his arms, jaw tense. "Did you do something with your bonus?" I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "What do you mean?" "I just got an email from my bank," he said, words clipped. "They said the expected deposit didn't go through. I thought maybe there was a delay or something." I nodded slowly, like I was processing. "Huh, that's strange." "Jason," his voice dropped. "Where's the money?" I met his eyes, didn't blink. "It's in a trust account, locked for investment purposes. Can't be touched for at least a year." The color drained from his face. "You what?" "I transferred it this afternoon," I said calmly, before dinner. "Figured it was the smart move, for my future." Ryan stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. But Dad said we all agreed. "You all agreed?" I corrected him. "Nobody asked me." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. I smiled. Not cruel, not smug, just calm. "Merry Christmas, Ryan." I walked past him, back toward the dining room, leaving him frozen in the hallway. The real show was about to begin. Ryan followed me back to the table, his face pale. He whispered something to Jenna. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed his arm, hissing a question I couldn't hear. Dad noticed the shift immediately. His jovial expression faltered. "Everything all right, son?" Ryan didn't answer. He just stared at me. Mom leaned forward, concern creasing her face. "Ryan, Jason, what's going on?" I set my napkin on the table, folded it neatly, and leaned back in my chair. "I transferred my bonus into a trust account this afternoon," I said, voice even. "It's locked. Can't be accessed." The room went still. Dad blinked. "You what?" "An irrevocable investment trust," I continued. "My financial advisor recommended it. Tax benefits, long-term growth. Smart move." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "But we already told Ryan." "You told Ryan a lot of things," I interrupted gently, "but nobody asked me." Dad's face flushed. "Jason, this was a family decision." "Was it?" I asked. "Because I don't remember being part of the conversation. I remember being told what you decided. There's a difference." Ryan slammed his hand on the table. "You knew we needed that money." "You needed my money?" I corrected. "And you assumed I'd just hand it over, like I always do." Aunt Linda gasped. Uncle Rob shifted uncomfortably. Jenna looked like she wanted to disappear. Mom's voice trembled. "Jason, your brother is starting a family. How could you be so selfish?" I turned to her slowly. "Selfish, right? Because paying off your credit cards last year wasn't generous? Because covering Ryan's security deposit wasn't enough? Because working myself into the ground so this family could stay afloat was just, what? My job." She flinched. Dad stood, pointing a finger. "You owe this family." "I don't owe anyone anything," I said, my voice like ice. "I've given enough." Ryan's face twisted with rage. "You're going to let us lose our house because of some stupid investment. You're going to lose your house because you bought one you couldn't afford," I shot back. "That's not my problem. That's yours." Jenna started crying. Mom rushed to comfort her. Dad looked at me like I'd just committed a crime. But I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel conflicted. I felt free. I stood, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. "I'm leaving," I said. "Dinner was lovely. Thanks for the memories." Nobody stopped me. As I reached the door, I heard Ryan's voice, shaking with fury. "You're dead to me." I paused, looked back. Good, I said. That makes two of us. And I walked out into the cold December night, leaving them to pick up the pieces of a plan that was never mine to begin with. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in desperation. Ryan called 47 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that started angry, turned pleading, then cycled back to furious. Jenna sent texts begging me to reconsider, painting pictures of their unborn child growing up homeless. Mom emailed long, guilt-laden letters about family values and Christian duty. Dad tried the silent treatment. Then he tried intimidation. Then he tried bargaining. I ignored all of it. Because the thing about cutting people off isn't the first cut. It's holding steady when they try to claw their way back. And they tried. Ryan posted on social media about betrayal, thinly veiling his rants so friends would ask questions. Extended family started reaching out, probing for my side of the story. Aunt Linda called, her voice dripping with false concern, asking if I was going through something. I gave polite, vague answers. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just let them wonder. Meanwhile, I watched the dominoes fall. Ryan's mortgage payment bounced. The bank sent a formal notice. He scrambled, pulling from credit cards, borrowing from Jenna's parents, selling furniture online. It wasn't enough. Dad tried to co-sign a loan, denied. His credit was already stretched thin from years of mismanagement. Mom called her sister, begging for help. Her sister, who'd watched this family drain me dry for years, politely declined. Their perfect little plan, built entirely on the assumption that I'd roll over, was collapsing in real time. And I wasn't lifting a finger to stop it. One evening, I sat in my quiet apartment, sipping coffee, scrolling through my phone. A notification popped up. A new voicemail from Ryan. I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was broken. Raw. Jason, please. I know I messed up. I know we all did. But Jenna's parents won't help anymore. The bank's talking about foreclosure. I don't know what to do. Please, just please. I set the phone down, stared at the ceiling, and felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a strange, hollow peace. They'd burned through every backup plan, every safety net, every relationship they'd taken for granted. And now they were learning what I'd known my whole life, that when you treat people like resources, eventually the well runs dry. I didn't call him back. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm. For a moment, I thought Ryan was suing me. The idea almost made me laugh. But it wasn't that. It was a notice, a foreclosure notice. Ryan and Jenna's house was going to auction. I folded the letter carefully and set it on my desk. Then I made a phone call. 2 weeks after that, I stood in a courthouse lobby, holding a cashier's check and a stack of documents. The auction had just concluded. The house sold for less than market value. Happens all the time with foreclosures. The buyer? A trust I'd quietly set up through my attorney. Ryan never knew I was there. Neither did Jenna or my parents. But I knew. I drove by the house once, just to see it. The lawn was overgrown. The mailbox hung crooked. It looked abandoned, even though I knew they were still inside, packing. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. The house would be rented out to a nice young couple through a property management company. Fair price, good tenants, clean slate. Ryan and Jenna moved into a small apartment across town. Jenna's parents helped with the deposit. From what I heard through the family grapevine, Ryan finally got a job. Retail. Entry-level. Humbling. Mom and Dad stopped calling. They sent one final email accusing me of destroying the family. I didn't respond. Aunt Linda unfriended me on social media. Uncle Rob stopped inviting me to reunions. I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying their weight. I wasn't the invisible safety net. I wasn't the dependable, silent son who sacrificed everything so they could pretend their golden child was perfect. I was just Jason. And that was enough. 6 months later, I took that vacation I'd been putting off for years. Italy. 2 weeks. No schedule, no obligations. I wandered through Florence, ate pasta in tiny trattorias, watch sunsets over the Tuscan hills. I didn't check my phone obsessively. I didn't worry about anyone else's problems. I just existed. One evening, sitting in a cafe with a glass of wine, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was Jenna. I'm sorry for how everything went. Ryan's getting help. Therapy. We're working on things. I hope you're doing okay. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I hope things get better for you both. Take care. And I meant it. Not because I forgave them. Not because I wanted them back in my life. But because holding on to anger felt like carrying their weight all over again. And I was done carrying. I finished my wine, paid the bill, and walked back to my hotel through cobblestone streets. The air was warm. The city glowed. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt light. The family I was born into had taught me I was only valuable when I was useful. That love was conditional. That sacrifice was expected, not appreciated. But they were wrong. I wasn't a wallet. I wasn't a backup plan. I wasn't the invisible son anymore. I was free. And that was the greatest revenge of all. A year later, I moved into a house I bought with my own money. Small, but mine. No co-signers, no favors owed. I built a life that didn't revolve around anyone else's needs. I made friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could give. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that Christmas dinner, about the moment Dad clinked his glass and announced my bonus was no longer mine, and I smile. Not because I hurt them, but because I finally chose myself. They taught me a hard lesson, that sometimes the people who demand the most loyalty are the ones least willing to give it. But I learned something better, that peace isn't found in being needed. It's found in being enough, just as you are. Ryan's doing better, I hear. Working, paying his own bills, learning what I learned the hard way. Mom and Dad still don't talk to me. Maybe they never will. And I'm okay with that because the family I've built, the life I've chosen, is full of people who see me, really see me. Not as a safety net, but as a person. And that's more than enough. So, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand like that with family?
I really want to know what you think.